All right, so today we're going to be looking at the Pakistani fertilizer industry.
Okay.
You sent over this really in-depth report from KTrade Research, and
Yeah.
it really seems like you're interested in FFC, FATIMA, and EFERT.
Yeah, those are the big players. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in this market. It's not just some niche thing.
Right.
This is a country with the potential to really be a global player in food security.
Yeah, for sure. The report definitely paints a picture of like an industry that is poised for growth,
Mm-hmm.
but like always, there's got to be some kind of catch, right?
Of course.
There are always
So
challenges.
let's break it all down.
Yeah,
The good, the bad, and the companies that are really like making waves.
sounds good. So maybe we should start by zooming out a little bit.
Okay.
Look at the national level. What's happening in Pakistan in terms of policy?
Okay.
Because the government there is really pulling out all the stops to boost their agricultural sector.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how much arable land they actually have.
Yeah.
They're 11th globally.
And then fourth in the world for irrigated land.
That's right. They've
Yeah.
got a great foundation to build on.
So it's like they've got all the pieces. It's just about like putting it all together.
Exactly. And that's where this Green Pakistan initiative comes in the GPI.
Okay.
They're opening up something like 4.8 million acres to investors.
Wow.
That's huge.
Uh,
That's a signal that they are serious about attracting capital and modernizing their farming practices.
yeah, 4.8 million acres. That's got to get some attention.
Oh, yeah. Investors are definitely taking notice. And you know what else is interesting?
What's that?
The IMF is actually on board with all of this. They're mandating changes that actually benefit fertilizer producers.
Oh, really? Like how?
Well, for example, they're phasing out gas-fired power plants to free up more natural gas for fertilizer production.
So it's like a double whammy. They're addressing that debt in the energy sector
Exactly.
while also supporting domestic fertilizer production.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it all feeds into this bigger goal of strengthening their food security.
Right. But that makes me think about the other side of the equation.
What do you mean?
All those challenges that Pakistan has had with agriculture in the past.
Right.
Like the report mentions that something like 90% of Pakistani farmers work on less than 12.5 acres.
Yeah, small farm sizes have been a real issue.
So can these big initiatives like the GPI really make a difference for those farmers?
That's the big question. Can they bridge that gap
Yeah.
and bring these farmers into the world of modern high-yield practices?
It's like the success of this whole thing hinges on those small farms being able to adapt.
To some extent, yeah. It's not just about the land and resources, though.
Right.
The report also talks about farmer awareness.
Okay.
Many of these farmers are used to traditional methods.
Yeah.
Shifting to newer technologies requires education and support.
That makes sense.
And the GPI actually includes these agri-mall services.
What are those?
It's like a one-stop shop for farmers.
Oh, wow.
They can access fertilizer, seeds, equipment, even financial services all in one place.
So they're really trying to like hold their hand through the whole process.
Exactly. But will it be enough to really get those smaller farmers to change their ways?
It's a wait and see kind of thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
And while all of this is happening on the policy side, there's also a lot going on in the corporate landscape.
Okay. Yeah. The report definitely mentions some interesting moves from these companies.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
We're talking mergers, acquisitions, a real battle for market share. Things are heating up.
Like with FFC, for example, merging with FFBL, that's got to create like a behemoth in the Pakistani fertilizer market.
It's a major consolidation of power. We're talking about a combined entity that can control half the domestic market.
For urea and DAP.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's going to have a ripple effect throughout the whole industry.
And then you've got that whole fight over Agritech Limited,
AGL.
FFC, FATIMA, and Maple Leaf Group all trying to grab it.
It's a prize worth fighting for. AGL is strategically located, incredibly efficient.
And they offer that low-cost alternative to DAP, right?
Yeah, SSP,
Yeah.
exactly. Whoever wins this battle gains a serious advantage.
It's like a whole corporate thriller unfolding.
And these companies are thinking long-term, too.
Yeah,
They're
right.
not just thinking about the next quarter. They're
Mhm.
making moves to secure their future.
Like with that pressure enhancement facility at Mars HRL.
Exactly. That investment guarantees them a steady supply of natural gas until 2030.
Wow. So they're literally locking down a crucial resource.
They're playing the long game. But, even with all this optimism and investment, there has been a recent downturn in farm economics.
Yeah, the report mentions that it seems like removing those crop support prices and then some bad weather really hurt.
It's been tough. The report acknowledges that this dip in farm incomes is impacting fertilizer demand in the short term.
So the question is this a temporary blip or a sign of something more serious?
Right. And the government is trying to address it with programs like those Kiss on cards,
Okay.
offering interest-free loans and tractor subsidies.
So they're trying to bring some stability back.
It's a balancing act. You
Okay.
know, they need to address immediate concerns, but also encourage long-term growth.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and focus on the companies themselves.
Okay.
The report really seems to like FFC. They're their top pick.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that seems to be because of their focus on DAP fertilizer.
There's a logic to it.
Yeah.
You see, as Pakistani farming practices evolve,
Uh-huh.
DAP is expected to play a much bigger role, especially with this push towards higher crop yields.
And they're definitely in a strong position after merging with FFBL, right?
Yeah. They control a huge chunk of the market.
Mm.
And their stake in Pakistan Maroc phosphor gives them control over their raw materials,
So they got the supply chain locked down.
which is crucial in an industry like this. But of course, there's a flip side.
Where's that?
What if the market doesn't shift towards DAP, as they're predicting?
Then they've put all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. It's a calculated risk.
Now, FATIMA seems to be taking a totally different approach.
Yeah, they're all about innovation and ag tech.
Really trying to set themselves apart.
They're the innovators in this group. They're
Mhm.
leading the way with those NP and CAN fertilizers, which is interesting because they could really benefit from this growing focus on corporate farming.
Why is that?
Well, larger scale farming operations tend to be more data-driven, more focused on optimizing yields.
Okay.
And that's where NP and CAN come in. They allow for more precise nutrient application.
And those bigger farms are all about that.
Exactly. They're also investing heavily in ag tech, partnering with startups developing their own solutions.
So they're not just selling fertilizer,
They want to be a comprehensive solutions provider for the whole agricultural sector.
but they have that problem with the gas supply to their DHCl urea plant, right?
Yeah, that's their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
It's been a drag on their performance.
And it really highlights a broader issue in Pakistan.
That inconsistent infrastructure is a problem. It's really limiting their potential.
So the report says there could be a rebound, but it all depends on those policy changes actually working.
Exactly. Will those changes translate into a more reliable gas supply? That's the key question.
Okay, and then there's EFERT, the company that's all about those shareholder returns.
They love those dividends. Steady income stream for investors.
And they're not just sticking with the traditional urea market either. They're pushing those specialty fertilizers like Z-urea.
Smart move. Z-urea taps into that demand for high-yield solutions that we're seeing with corporate farming.
But they've got that issue with the high cost of gas, right?
Yeah, compared to their competitors, they're really getting squeezed.
So it's putting a lot of pressure on their margins.
It's a tough spot.
Hmm.
They'll need to get creative to stay competitive.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
National policies, corporate strategies.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that this industry is in a state of change.
Definitely. A lot of moving parts.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of these companies' performance,
Okay.
maybe we should take a closer look at what's happening at the farm level.
Yeah, let's bring it back down to earth.
See how all of this is actually impacting the farmers on the ground.
Because ultimately, their success is what drives the entire industry.
Exactly.
So let's dig in.
All right. Okay, so we've talked about all these like big policies, the corporate stuff, but
Yeah.
let's talk about like the actual farmers.
Right. Let's get down to the ground level.
Yeah. How are all these changes actually affecting them?
Well, the report highlights some key challenges, especially for those small-scale farmers,
Right.
the ones who make up the vast majority of the sector.
Right. And that removal of crop support prices, that's got to be hitting them hard.
Oh, yeah. It was meant to address fiscal concerns, but it really left those farmers exposed.
To the market.
Exactly. Global commodity prices are volatile. You never know what's going to happen.
So they're kind of just stuck right in the wave.
Pretty much. And then on top of that, remember that whole wheat import crisis last year?
Oh, yeah.
Put even more pressure on the government to find ways to support these farmers?
It sounds like it's been rough.
It has.
Yeah.
And you see provincial governments stepping in now
Really?
with their own schemes and programs trying to fill that gap.
So it's like a patchwork of solutions.
In a way, yeah. But it's not just about handing out money, right? There are these long-standing structural challenges.
And have always held back Pakistani agriculture.
Exactly. Things that need to be addressed for real progress to happen.
Like that issue of small farm sizes.
Yep. It keeps coming up, but it's really at the heart of it all.
Yeah, because how are those farmers supposed to invest in new equipment or technology?
When they're working with such small plots of land,
It's like they're stuck.
their profit margins are tiny. They just don't have the capital.
And that's where that whole corporate farming thing comes in, right?
Exactly. The report seems to think that's a potential solution.
Because those big corporate farms are more likely to use the modern stuff.
The high-yield practices Pakistan needs to boost production.
They've got the resources to actually make those investments.
And they're operating on a scale where it makes financial sense.
Right. So it's like the government is trying to do two things at once. Help those struggling farmers in the short term.
Right.
And also encourage this long-term shift toward corporate farming.
But those smaller farms can't be left behind.
It could create all sorts of problems down the line.
Social and economic problems.
Yeah. So it's a delicate balance.
For sure. But despite all of these challenges,
Yeah.
the report still seems pretty optimistic about the Pakistani fertilizer industry.
Really?
Yeah. They think it's well-positioned for growth.
Even with everything going on?
Even with the downturn in farm economics,
Huh?
the fertilizer companies we've been talking about,
Yeah.
they've actually performed quite well.
Really?
Their stock prices have outperformed the market.
So investors are still bullish on the industry.
They see the potential. They're betting on Pakistan's ability to transform its agricultural sector.
To become a real global player.
Exactly. But of course, there are risks,
Yeah, like what if those global commodity prices go haywire?
especially for energy.
Like
Pakistan relies heavily on natural gas.
for fertilizer production.
If those prices spike, it could really hurt their profitability.
And what about their gas reserves?
Right. What happens if those start running out faster than expected?
The report mentioned that,
They might have to rely on imported gas.
which would mean they're at the mercy of global prices.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
a high-risk, high-reward situation.
You really got to do your homework before jumping in.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Understand the nuances of the market and the companies operating within it.
Don't just skim the surface.
Go deeper. Look beyond the headlines.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
We're not just summarizing the report. We're dissecting it,
Analyzing it.
questioning it, connecting it to the bigger picture.
Now, speaking of those companies, let's revisit those individual assessments.
Starting with FFC,
Okay.
the report's top pick.
They're all about that DAP.
They're huge after merging with FFBL.
And they're betting big on DAP becoming even more important as farming practices evolve.
That's a gamble.
But they've got that diversified portfolio to help cushion the blow if things don't go their way.
Now, FATIMA, they're doing their own thing
The innovators,
with those NP and CAN fertilizers.
which could be big winners if corporate farming really takes off.
And that whole ag tech ecosystem they're building.
They're forward-thinking,
Mm.
but that gas supply issue is holding them back.
It's a major hurdle.
Until they fix that, their growth is limited.
And then there's EFERT, the dividend kings.
Reliable payouts, steady income.
And they're trying to carve out a niche with that Z-urea.
Smart move, but those high gas prices are a problem
They're going to need to find a way to deal with that.
if they want to stay competitive and keep those dividends flowing.
So we've looked at the policies, the corporate moves.
The challenges facing farmers
We've talked about the potential rewards.
and the risks involved.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about.
What's that?
The bigger picture.
Okay.
Where does Pakistan fit into the global food system?
Right. What are the implications of their ambitions?
Not just to feed their own people, but to become a major exporter.
Now we're getting to the really interesting stuff.
The report only gives us part of the story.
It's up to us to connect the dots and see where this all leads.
So we've got this report, laying it all out.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about the bigger picture. Like, can Pakistan really pull this off?
Become a major player in the global food market.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge goal.
It is. They've got the resources, the land. The policies are starting to line up.
But it still feels risky.
Oh, there are definitely challenges.
The report doesn't really talk about the people you know.
Right. The human element.
Yeah. Can all these new policies and technologies actually reach those millions of small-scale farmers?
The ones who are really the backbone of Pakistani agriculture.
Exactly. That's got to be the biggest hurdle.
It's not just about giving them access to fertilizer.
It's about changing the way they farm,
Empowering them to adopt these modern practices.
bridging that gap between tradition and technology.
It's a huge undertaking. It's going to require education, infrastructure, support systems.
And that's just internally.
Right.
What about all the external pressures?
The global landscape,
We've talked about how volatile commodity prices can be,
especially energy,
and Pakistan is so reliant on natural gas.
for fertilizer production.
So if those prices spike,
It could throw everything off.
and then there's the issue of their own gas reserves,
So, right. What happens if those start running out?
they'll have to import gas.
Which makes them even more vulnerable to global price swings.
So yeah, The Pakistani fertilizer industry,
Hmm.
it's got potential, but
There's some big question marks.
this isn't just some easy investment.
No, you got to be careful. Do your homework.
Look at the risks as well as the rewards.
It's a complex situation.
Always evolving.
The report is a good starting point.
But you can't stop there.
You got to dig deeper. Think critically.
Consider all the angles.
And that's what we've been trying to do here today.
Yeah, go beyond just the surface level.
Look at the broader context.
And ultimately give you the tools to make your own decisions.
Because knowledge is power, but only if you know how to use it.
And you know what else I was thinking?
What's that?
The report really focuses on those big established players.
FFC, FATIMA, EFERT.
Right, but what about disruption?
You mean from smaller companies?
Yeah, could they shake things up?
It's possible. We've seen how FATIMA is embracing innovation.
With AgTech,
Could these smaller companies be even bolder?
maybe they can find a way to reach those small-scale farmers.
The ones the big companies are struggling to connect with.
Something to think about.
There's always more to learn.
The story of the Pakistani fertilizer industry.
It's still being written.
Who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to change the game.
Find that next big innovation.
Help Pakistan achieve its goals.
It's an exciting time to be watching this market.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Pakistani fertilizer industry.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
Remember, do your own research.
Make informed decisions.
And never stop learning.
We'll see you next time.